Cool, I said, keeping my voice steady even as my chest tightened. Then I added, almost casually, that makes things a lot simpler. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Not the kind where someone loses signal, but the kind where they realize they've just said something they can't take back. My mom cleared her throat. I didn't mean it like that, Sarah. But she did. She always did. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 29 years old, living in a cramped studio apartment in downtown Portland, Oregon. And for as long as I can remember, Christmas has been my responsibility, even though no one ever called it that. I was the planner, the reminder sender, the problem solver, the emotional buffer between family members who couldn't stand each other for more than 3 hours without supervision. I was the one who made sure gifts were bought on time, relatives were coordinated, arguments were softened before they exploded into full-blown warfare. I tracked who was bringing what dish, who needed rides from the airport, which cousin couldn't be seated next to which uncle. I sent the calendar invites, the group texts, the gentle nudges when people forgot to RSVP. And every single year, my mother took the credit. Our family is so close, she'd tell her book club friends, sipping wine in our kitchen while I scrubbed serving dishes in the background. I don't know how we got so lucky. Lucky. Right. So when she told me, 2 weeks before Christmas, that they were keeping things small this year and that it would be better if I didn't come, something inside me finally stopped bending. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why or beg for an explanation. I just said, cool. She had no idea what that word really meant. What it would cost her. To the outside world, my mother, Barbara Mitchell, was warmth and tradition personified. Matching cable knit sweaters from LL Bean. Perfect table settings with hand-lettered place cards. Carefully staged family photos in front of our 12-foot Douglas fir, everyone positioned just so, smiles frozen and mandatory. What they didn't see was me, up at midnight answering endless group chats, reminding my cousins what they'd promised to bring, smoothing over fights between my parents so guests wouldn't notice the ice-cold tension that had settled over their marriage like frost on a windshield. My older brother Cameron never lifted a finger. He was busy with work, stressed about the promotion, trying his best. Somehow, those excuses were always enough. He'd show up on Christmas Eve with a bottle of expensive scotch and everyone would act like he'd single-handedly saved the holiday. Meanwhile, I'd been there since December 1st, stringing lights, addressing cards, organizing the gift exchange, and fielding my mother's increasingly frantic phone calls about whether we should serve prime rib or honey-glazed ham. Last Christmas, when the catering from Giuseppe's Italian kitchen fell through at the last minute, I handled it. I spent 4 hours on Christmas Eve making lasagna from scratch, calling in favors, pulling together a meal for 18 people. When Grandma Dorothy forgot her blood pressure medication at home in Salem, I drove 90 minutes round trip through ice and sleet to get it. When Mom had a meltdown because the tree looked lopsided and wrong, I stayed up until 2 a.m. rearranging ornaments. All she said afterward was, well, it all worked out in the end. Not thank you. Not I couldn't have done this without you. Just it all worked out. This year, apparently, it could work out without me. The next morning, I was sitting at the scarred wooden table in my apartment, nursing my second cup of coffee and staring at my laptop screen without really seeing it, when my phone buzzed. Cameron. I almost didn't answer. Hey, he said when I finally picked up, his voice already carrying that defensive edge I knew so well. Mom didn't mean to hurt you. She told me not to come to Christmas, I replied flatly. How exactly should I interpret that? She just thinks your energy might make things tense this year. I actually laughed. It came out harsh and bitter. My energy? Or the fact that I stopped agreeing with her about everything? That I stopped pretending her marriage is fine? That I called out Dad for his drinking at Thanksgiving? Silence on the other end. Then he said it. The thing that would change everything. Look, she's under a lot of pressure. Especially after helping you so much over the years. She just needs a break from managing everyone's expectations. Helping me. That word stuck in my throat like a fishbone. What exactly did she help me with? I asked slowly, carefully. You know, he said quickly, too quickly. Everything. The money. The emotional support. What money, Cameron? Another pause. This one stretched too long, filled with the weight of things unsaid. I gotta go, he muttered. Conference call starting. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. Conference call. On a Saturday morning. Right. That's when the unease started. Not dramatic, not a thunderclap of realization. Just a slow creeping feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. That there were pieces of a puzzle I'd never thought to look for because I'd trusted the picture I'd been shown. I opened my laptop properly this time, fingers moving almost without conscious thought. I started with my email. Old folders I hadn't opened in years. Attachments I'd saved and forgotten about. Bank statements from when I'd lived at home, when Mom had helped me manage my finances because I was too young to understand these things properly. That's when I found the first thread. An automated email from Cascade Federal Credit Union. Subject line, Education Fund, S. Mitchell, Annual Statement. I didn't remember ever seeing these before. My hands were shaking as I clicked through the attachments. Years of statements, dating back to when I was 16 years old. An account opened in my name by my grandmother, my dad's mother, who'd passed away when I was 19. Gran had put money aside for me. For college. $20,000, grown over years of careful saving. The balance had been emptied 6 years ago. A single withdrawal, processed in October. The signature on the authorization form was my mother's. I sat frozen, staring at the screen until the words blurred together. 6 years ago, I'd been 23. Fresh out of community college with my associate degree, working double shifts at the Copper Kettle Diner, scraping together tips and hoping to transfer to Portland State to finish my bachelor's. That was the year my mother sat me down in our living room, her face arranged in sympathetic lines, and told me the family couldn't afford to help with school anymore. That Dad's business was struggling. That they had their own retirement to think about. That maybe I should consider taking some time off, getting more work experience, being realistic about my goals. I'd believed her. Of course I'd believed her. I'd kept working at the diner. I'd put my dreams on hold. I told myself it was temporary, just a year or two, but years have a way of becoming permanent when you're barely keeping your head above water. Meanwhile, that same October, Cameron had suddenly paid off $15,000 in credit card debt. He'd bought himself a brand new Jeep Wrangler, silver with black trim. He'd taken his girlfriend, now wife, on a 2-week trip to Cancun. When I'd asked him how he'd managed it, he'd shrugged and said something vague about finally getting my finances in order and making better choices. I'd felt inadequate. Like I was doing something wrong, like I was the one who couldn't get my life together. I stood up from the table so fast my chair scraped across the floor with a harsh screech. I paced my tiny apartment, 12 steps from the kitchen to the window, 12 steps back. My breath came shallow and quick. I wanted to call her. To scream. To demand answers. But some instinct stopped me. The same instinct that had kept me surviving in this family for 29 years. The instinct that said, gather your evidence first. Know exactly what you're dealing with before you show your hand. I spent the rest of that Saturday afternoon digging through everything I could find. Old emails. Saved documents. Photo albums on my external hard drive. There were other things. Smaller things. A graduation gift from my Aunt Teresa, $500, supposedly lost in the mail. A tax refund for my first job that Mom had helped me deposit, but that I'd never seen appear in my account. Birthday checks from relatives that had somehow never made it to me. Nothing huge on its own. But together? Together they painted a picture I'd been too close to see. My mother hadn't just uninvited me from Christmas. She hadn't just taken credit for my work, my planning, my emotional labor year after year. She'd been systematically erasing me, my resources, my opportunities, my future, for years. And she'd done it while making me feel grateful for her help. I didn't feel shocked. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt something colder, clearer. Like looking at my life through a lens that had finally come into focus. She'd stolen from me. And she'd made me thank her for it. That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed, laptop balanced on my knees, staring at the family group chat on my phone. Christmas coordination, Mitchell family. 37 members. 3 years of message history. Everything from who's bringing rolls, to has anyone heard from Uncle Phil, to my mother's endless stream of instructions, demands disguised as questions, guilt trips wrapped in holiday cheer. I was still the admin. Had been since I'd created the chat. Funny how the invisible work comes with invisible power. How the person nobody notices is the person who holds all the threads. I didn't write anything dramatic. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I didn't air the dirty laundry right there for everyone to see. Instead, I created a new group. Christmas update, new plan. I added everyone except my mother and Cameron. Then I typed, fingers steady. Hey everyone. Quick update, Mom's feeling overwhelmed this year and decided to scale things down to immediate family only. I respect that completely. For anyone who'd like to celebrate together, I'll be hosting a low-key Christmas gathering at my place. Nothing fancy. Just good food, good company, and no stress. Open invitation. RSVP if you're interested. No pressure either way. Red heart. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I watched. The 3 little dots appeared almost immediately as people started typing. Aunt Teresa, oh thank God. I was dreading the drive to your parents' house anyway. What can I bring? Cousin Jennifer, honestly? We were only coming because of you, Sarah. You always made it bearable. Count us in. Uncle Greg, your mom uninvited you? That's cold. We're coming to yours. Grandma Dorothy, sweetheart, I'd be honored. I'll bring my famous pecan pie. The messages kept coming. 15 people. Then 20. Then 25. Nearly everyone in the extended family, all saying some version of the same thing. They'd been coming for me, not for my mother's perfect tablescape. I watched it unfold with a strange sense of calm. This wasn't revenge, not really. This was just honesty. Truth. The natural consequence of my mother's own decision. She'd uninvited me. I was respecting that boundary. And I was offering an alternative to people who'd always had to choose between family connection and holiday stress. In another chat, the original one, I could see my mother had started typing. Then stopped. Then started again. The dots disappeared. She'd realized what had happened. That her perfectly controlled Christmas was quietly unraveling, and there was nothing she could do about it without looking even worse. I turned off my phone and went to bed. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking up anxious, mentally running through tomorrow's to-do list. 2 days before Christmas, I was at Target buying paper plates, because I decided my gathering would be genuinely low-key, not performatively perfect, when my phone rang. Mom. Calling from the landline, which meant she was at home, probably pacing the kitchen, which meant she was seriously rattled. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. What do you think you're doing? She snapped, skipping hello entirely. I'm buying plates, I said mildly. The compostable kind. They're better for. You know what I mean, Sarah. This stunt with the family. I'm respecting your decision, I replied, voice pleasant. You said you weren't celebrating with me this year. So I made other plans. I thought you'd appreciate me being independent. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you said, Mom. Word for word. She pivoted then, switching tactics like she always did when the direct approach failed. After everything I've sacrificed for you. After raising you, supporting you, being there for you, this is how you repay me? By turning the family against me. I stood there in the middle of the holiday aisle, Christmas music playing overhead, people maneuvering around me with their overflowing carts. Including my college fund? I said quietly. The silence that followed was different from any silence we'd ever shared. This one had weight. Substance. The gravity of truth acknowledged. I did what I had to do, she said finally, voice cold and controlled. For the family. We were struggling. Cameron needed help getting back on his feet. You were always going to be fine. You're resilient. For Cameron, I corrected. You stole my money and gave it to Cameron. I didn't steal anything. I'm your mother. I made a parenting decision. I was an adult. That money was mine. Gran left it for me, for my education. You forged my signature and emptied the account. She left it for the family, Mom said, voice rising. You're being selfish. You're always so selfish, Sarah. This is exactly why I didn't want you at Christmas. You make everything about you. I almost laughed. Almost. I'm hanging up now. Don't you dare. I ended the call. My hands were shaking. Not from fear or sadness. From rage. Pure, clean rage that I'd been suppressing for years under layers of people-pleasing and family loyalty. I stood there for another moment, then opened my Photos app. Found the screenshots I'd taken of the bank statements. The email trail. The forged signature. I created a new post on Facebook. Made it public. Tagged no one. The text was simple. For anyone who's ever wondered why I never finished my degree, or why I've worked 3 jobs while living paycheck to paycheck, or why I seem to give up on my dreams, this is part of the answer. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect your future are the ones who steal it. Sometimes family means something different than blood. I attached the screenshots. Then I hit post. On Christmas Eve, my apartment was full. Not perfect. Not coordinated. Not Instagram-worthy. But real. My studio apartment, 385 square feet of cramped, cluttered living space, somehow held 23 people. We'd pushed my bed against the wall and covered it with coats. Folding chairs borrowed from the building's community room lined the walls. The kitchen counter overflowed with mismatched dishes brought by various relatives. Uncle Greg had brought buckets of Popeye's fried chicken because his oven had broken that morning. Cousin Jennifer contributed bags of Taco Bell because her kids had demanded it. Aunt Teresa made her famous 7-layer dip. Grandma Dorothy brought not just pecan pie but also her legendary sugar cookies shaped like trees and stars. Someone burned the boxed brownies. We laughed about it and ate them anyway, scraping off the charred edges. The TV played Elf on repeat in the background, mostly ignored. Kids ran around playing with wrapping paper tubes like swords. Adults squeezed onto my second-hand couch and sat on the floor with plates balanced on their knees. It was chaotic. It was loud. It was nothing like my mother's precisely orchestrated productions. It was perfect. Sarah, Grandma Dorothy said, pulling me aside into my tiny bathroom where we could hear ourselves think. Her weathered hands held mine, rings loose on her thin fingers. I wish I'd known sooner. About the money. About all of it. Your grandfather and I, we wanted you to have opportunities we never had. That money was supposed to be your fresh start. It's not your fault, Grandma. But I could have checked. Could have asked. I just assumed. She shook her head. Your mother always said you were doing fine, that you decided school wasn't for you. I should have talked to you directly. She's good at controlling the narrative, I said softly. Grandma squeezed my hands. You're stronger than she ever gave you credit for. Than any of us realized. Around 8 p.m., there was a knock at the door. Different from the constant stream of arrivals, this one hesitant, almost apologetic. I opened it to find Cameron standing in the hallway. No wife, no kids. Just him, looking rumpled and exhausted in a wrinkled button-down shirt, hands shoved in his pockets. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I stepped aside. He looked around at the crowded, joyful chaos of my apartment. At the family he'd expected to see at our parents' house, now gathered in this tiny space instead. She never said sorry, he admitted, voice barely audible over the noise. When I confronted her about the money. About what she did. She just kept talking about how embarrassed she was. How you'd humiliated her in front of everyone. How ungrateful you were being. There's a difference, I said. Between being sorry you got caught and being sorry for what you did. He nodded slowly. I didn't know. About the money. I swear I didn't know it was yours. She told me it was from their retirement fund, that they wanted to help me get my life together. Do you believe that now? A long pause. No. No, I don't. He stayed. He ate burned brownies and Popeye's chicken. He played with his nieces and nephews. He sat on the floor next to me and said, I'll pay you back. It'll take time, but I'll pay you back every cent. That mattered. Not just the promise, but the acknowledgement. The crack in the family facade wide enough to let truth through. Near midnight, after most people had left, after the kids had fallen asleep in nests of coats on my bed, after Grandma Dorothy had been helped down to Uncle Greg's car, there was another knock. This one I recognized. Authoritative. Demanding. The knock of someone who expects doors to open for them. Cameron looked at me. Want me to handle it? No, I said. This is mine. I opened the door. My mother stood in the hallway, looking smaller somehow than she did in my memories. Her makeup was smudged, mascara tracked down one cheek. Her hair, usually perfect, had started to slip from its clip. Her pride was cracking at the edges like old paint. "I'm alone," she said, as if this was an accusation. "Is that what you wanted? To humiliate me? To take everything from me?"
No, i ensuara tu nasli.
I wanted the truth. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted an apology. She waited. For me to soften, to cave, to do what I'd always done. Smooth things over, make it easier for her, prioritize her comfort over my own hurt. I didn't move. "I did what I thought was right," she said finally. "I made a choice. Maybe it wasn't the right one, but I was trying to help the whole family. You're punishing me for trying to hold this family together. You stole from me," I said flatly. "You forged my signature. You lied to me about why I couldn't afford school. You gave my future to Cameron and then made me feel like I'd failed for not having what you took from me. I made a mistake. That's not an apology." Her face hardened. "I don't deserve this treatment. I'm your mother. I deserve respect." "Respect is earned," I said. "And you spent years teaching me that my needs, my dreams, my future were less important than maintaining your perfect family image. You uninvited me from Christmas because I stopped playing along with that lie. So you destroyed everything out of spite." "No. I told the truth. The fact that it destroyed your carefully constructed narrative isn't spite. It's consequences." She straightened up, pulling her coat tighter around herself. The vulnerability from a moment ago disappeared, replaced by cold dignity. "I won't be spoken to like this. By my own daughter." "Then you have a choice to make," I said quietly. "You can acknowledge what you did. Actually apologize. Work to make amends. Be my mother in truth instead of just in name. Or you can leave. You're giving me an ultimatum. I'm setting a boundary. I'm not the problem you can erase anymore. I'm not the person who'll sacrifice herself to make your life easier. If you want me in your life, it's as your daughter, not as your backup plan, not as your unpaid assistant, not as your scapegoat." She stared at me, waiting for me to break. To apologize for my own boundaries. To back down. When I didn't, something shifted in her expression. A mix of disbelief and wounded pride, and something that might have been recognition that the old dynamic was truly dead. "I don't deserve this," she said again, but quieter now. I stepped back and opened the door wider so she could see into my apartment. The remnants of the evening, plates scattered across surfaces, Grandma Dorothy's empty pie tin, wrapping paper crumpled on the floor, Cameron asleep on my couch with someone's toddler drooling on his shoulder. "Then you know where the elevator is," I said. She stood there for another long moment. I could see the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of options. Would apologizing cost her more than losing me? Would admitting fault hurt worse than this estrangement? She chose. She turned and walked down the hallway toward the elevators, back straight, head high, taking her pride with her and leaving nothing else behind. I closed the door gently. No slamming. No drama. Just a quiet click of a lock sliding into place. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and breathed. In and out. Steady. Certain. Behind me, Cameron stirred. She left. "Yeah. Are you okay?" I turned to look at my apartment. At the beautiful mess of it. At the evidence of people who'd chosen to be here with me, in this cramped space with its burned brownies and mismatched furniture. "Yeah," I said, and meant it. "I really am." Later, after Cameron had taken the last sleepy kid home, after I'd done a cursory cleanup and decided the rest could wait until morning, I sat on my windowsill and looked out at Portland's skyline. Christmas lights twinkled in windows across the city. Somewhere out there, people were having perfect, picture-worthy holidays. Somewhere else, people were having disasters. I was having something different. Something real. I realized something as I sat there in the quiet, watching the city breathe. I hadn't ruined Christmas. I'd reclaimed it. I'd taken it back from someone who turned it into a performance, an obligation, a test I was always failing. Revenge didn't heal everything. The money was still gone. The years I'd lost weren't coming back. The relationship with my mother might never recover, and that would always hurt somewhere deep down, in the place where little girls need their mothers to protect them. But I'd stopped the lie. I'd stopped participating in my own erasure. And for the first time in my life, when someone said I wasn't needed, I believed something better instead. I was free. I was enough. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Outside my window, snow began to fall, rare for Portland, a small Christmas miracle. I watched the flakes drift down through the streetlight glow and thought about fresh starts. About blank pages. About how sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is permission to stop carrying other people's expectations on your back. Merry Christmas to me. And for once, I meant it.